basically, he moved back east in 1932, and the rest of his story is that he went to, with Paul Strand's recommendations, he went to the Yada Foundation, and the Yada Foundation was a whole literary community, sort of like Taos, and with those introductions, you would sleep on people's couches, whenever anyone was around. You were invited around for free meals, because again, he had no livelihood in New York, so he was living really hand to mouth. He met my mother, Helen Hooker, who was an artist, and they basically fall in love and returned to Ireland and married. And they became a modern force in influencing the arts in Ireland by his writing and art criticism, and her sculpture, painting, theatre, stage sets, interior decorating, and photography. I have 2 books up here on her photography, which you're welcome to browse. And ultimately, the marriage breaks down. He died in 1957. Anyway, I probably overstayed my time, but we can end there and put lights on. And if there are any questions, I'll take questions.
Do you think you knew O'Keeffe?
Yes, Georgia was one of those, what can we say politely, a character.
Oh, yes.
Who fell out with everyone.
Oh, yes.
And
including Mabel Bowers.
Including. And so that summer of 1929, Father writes about the compound, Los Galos, in which it was like a castellet. And so in one corner was Jean Marat, the other corner was George O'Keeffe, and the other corner was Paul Strand's first wife, Rachel. Becky Strand, and the fourth compound was a couple who had a daughter. The daughter's name was Miriam. Anyway, and so the fight occurred throughout the day and at night. So by the time Father hit there on September 29th, everyone had left except Ella Young, who was in a fifth house. So when they go back to New York, ironically enough, here's an American artist who's sort of well-to-do, lives in Greenwich Village in a certain sense, and as an Irishman is introducing her to George O'Keeffe and Stieglitz and Paul Strand. And so, but they weren't close. There's no significant communications. But clearly, I think what was important about those relatively short relationships is his appreciation of her art. And indeed, as you look at some of the photographs that they subsequently take, in the research, by the way, I found out in one of my Paul Strand's letters to my father of 1955, and he, just like Dorothy, had invited my father to write his book on Ireland. So Paul would take the photographs, and he'd already done a book on the Hebrides, on France, and on Italy. And so he, in this letter, where there's this, this is what researchers love, there was a giveaway sentence which said, I remember those 5 days driving you, around, being driven by you around Ireland in Johnny Rowley's Boston Minor. 5 weeks with Paul Strand in Ireland? And so suddenly I realized, well, what were they doing that he would remember this 30 years later? And the father was showing Paul Strand, his good friend, what Ireland was like. And I think that set in motion the whole concept of introducing his next best friend, Helen, to go around Ireland. And so they started up a photographic project, which was sort of, we've included many of those photographs in this of rural Ireland and medieval Ireland. And so he was sort of merely duplicating with his wife what the journey he'd done with Paul Strand. Anyway, yes?
Where'd they go in Mexico? Did they spend most of their time painting?
Well, what I see is in the diaries is that Dorothy and Theodora would go off and paint, and he wasn't a painter, so he'd go to the Salon or the Archaeological Museum. He'd be doing his arts, and again, given the pay scale, which each of them were, they lived for a while close together. He'd be in the backwaters, they'd be in Palazzo, so they kept in touch by notes, some of which I still have. Do you want to go to X or Y? Could you be available? And he writes about the car. And so I'm sure when they went out the countryside, they wanted to have a driver. So, could you be available? So all of that was worked out. But we do know, I'm not sure whether they followed him down to the Yucatan and down in that area. But we do know that the movie wasn't until over Mexico, but the other one that Eisenstein was working on with Edward Stewart, the director, who were Russians who were then living in Los Angeles. I think that was on a hacienda setting close to Cuernavaca. So they traveled around, and certainly was that beautiful silver town.
Tasco.
Tasco. So they were up in Tasco, and again, who was driving or what they were doing, I don't know. But they got around, and I have letters from to the Minister of Education, where he's trying to get introductions to rural Mexico to get some money. But, gringos and anyone who was white in Mexico is a gringo. So it was very hard in those economic times to be paid to even be a translator or whatever. And again, there was local pride, you wanted to employ local people, Mexican only type thing. There was a substantial intellectual gringo community in Mexico City, but they sort of lived into themselves and had their own wherewithal.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your mother?
My mother, great character. So she had a career before meeting Ernie O'Malley, a wild career, traveling. She decided she was a national junior tennis champion age 18, played with Mills and all of those people, and decided age 18 to give up tennis. And she all decided, because tennis was a social circle, and it was not professional in those days, so there was no sort of future in getting wherewithal. But it was also very demanding, and she'd done it for, she got paper clips from the age 13 on, so she'd spent 5 years of service in honor of her father, who liked having a prominent daughter and all of that stuff. And she just said, I'm 18, I finished high school, I want to be an artist. And no, I'm not going to go to university. Whether she could have gotten in or anything like that, but all of the hooker girls went to ask her. And she said no. And said, give me the money and I'll live in Greenwich Village and travel. And so she went to Paris and occasionally studied with Bourdelle, and she went to Soviet Union for 9 months and knew Pavlov and various other characters. She went to live in Greece and dance for 9 months in 1931. Then she came back and her father said, there is a depression going on here. You really need to cut back. And so she came back and traveled out west. There's one rumor that she came to Santa Fe with a young man whom she didn't marry. And there was toss up between marrying him and marrying my father. And she ended up taking the right choice. And she also then joined with him and went back to Ireland, and I'm just making a movie about that whole journey of how the two people became an influential circle in the Irish arts in the 40s and 50s. So maybe that will be shown here one of these days. Anyone else?
Well, I just want to say I love your bow tie.
I do too. I just have two quick comments. One is the factions at Los Galos, O'Keefe. B. Mandelman, who painted this picture, I met years ago. And we were in her studio, and my wife asked her if she was friends with O'Keeffe. She looked at her and said, "My dear, no one was friends with O'Keeffe."
Only Tony Lohan.
Yeah. The other comment is Cormac focused on Dorothy Stewart and Ernie O'Malley in fascinating time in New Mexico. But Ernie O'Malley, which, if you read the books, is a very significant person in Irish history. In fact, I believe he was the 8th person to have a state funeral in Ireland. So that history is really fascinating. Melanie, did you just want to say a few words?
I'll tell everyone here, if you're not a member, the Historic Santa Fe Foundation is a member-based organization, and if you're not a member, and if you paid for admission for today too, if you decide you want to become a member, today we could apply that $10 towards your membership. So if you decide you want to do that, this is our most recent newsletter, which actually has our master plan for this whole compound in it. So if you want to find out about some of the things that we're doing in the future, and then this is our recent mailer that has some initiatives for this year, including a reprint of Old Santa Fe Today, which is the book that is out there, which we're giving away. We ask that you give a donation if you can, but if you don't, you're welcome to take one. And the upcoming talks that we have coming up, we don't have a February just planned yet, so I would have told you that one, but we have one on cattle mutilation coming up. The new Palace of the Governor's photo archivist, the director of the archives is going to come and speak about the archives. The state historian is going to talk about Hispanic music. We've got one on acequias, women's right to vote, Jewish presence in New Mexico, and a few more. So we've got some really exciting talks. Like a lot of them, I actually picked out some of the topics, so I'm super excited about it. But a lot of the staff, we all kind of contributed with some ideas and some really great speakers. And if you sign up as a member, you can come to the talks at no charge. You do still have to RSVP. If there's any difficulties anybody has online, just give us a call. We'll try and help you, but we're putting everything through the website now. But I think that's about it. And we may shift some locations. For the most part, we're going to have all our talks here. But if it gets really, really full, we may have it other places, but we'll try and contact everybody well beforehand. So
It's a deal.
Oh, sorry. Do you have a question?
Just one observation about Ernie O'Malley.
Okay.
Am I right,
Thank you.
Cormac? Am I right, Cormac?
Yeah, that's yeah, more than that, but yeah, we can go with that one.
Tough guy.
Tough guy.
I was